In a previous story, we explored a strange disappearance in Alabama and the possible connection with fairy rings, the belief that someone could have instantly been transported to the realm of the fairies. We've also touched on the ancient Celtic beliefs in relation to Celtic immigrants and native beliefs melting together to create the granny witches of Appalachian tradition. Ancient Celtic folklore has always been a strong interest to me, but with this channel being devoted to the American South, I figured there wouldn't be much opportunity to explore my Celtic past that much here. Boy, was I wrong. Sure, there are a lot of beliefs and superstitions here that tie back to our Scottish and Irish ancestors, but it wasn't until I was researching local native legends and their ties with some stories that I've been researching that my eyes were really opened. Why was it that our ancestors in the Appalachian Mountains blended so easily with native culture when it seemed that everywhere else was nothing but conflict? Could it be that there was a shared belief in the good people, the fairy folk, the Tuatha De Danann? Personally, I believe so. You see, when the Scottish and Irish settlers fell in love with the landscape of the Appalachian Mountains because it reminded them of their homeland, the Tuatha De Danann were already there. The Cherokee people called these beings the Nunnehi. Everyone loves a good, strange, weird, or bizarre story. Well, welcome to the American South, where dark legends and haunted history lurk around every corner. Where superstition, folklore, and a touch of backwoods magic blend with everyday culture. Some say, in order to survive. This is Dixie After Dark. The Cherokee people believe in a race of beings called the Nunnehi, a race of immortal spirit people. The literal translation of Nunnehi means the people who live anywhere, but can also be translated as the people who live forever. According to the Cherokee, the Nunnehi are a type of supernatural humans, distinct from both ghosts and gods. Although the Nunnehi were thought to prefer the high peaks where trees did not grow, their homes were said to be underground across the southern Appalachian Mountains. Similarly, the Celtic Tuatha De Danann lived in the other world, but often interacted with humans in our own realm. The Tuatha De Danann are heavily associated with ancient burial mounds, which the Celtic people say were entrances to the other world. Back in the Appalachian Mountains, Cherokee hunters would often hear the Nunnehi in the mountains singing and dancing. But when they would approach the sounds, it would shift around suddenly, seeming to be coming from a different direction, so the person tracking the sounds would never be able to find the source. The Nunnehi stayed mostly invisible, only appearing to humans when they allowed themselves to be seen. When that would happen, they often preferred to present themselves as another Cherokee, but they were also known to be shapeshifters, along with another race that stayed close with them, the Yunwi-Junsti, translated as little people. Starting to sound familiar? The Nunnehi love music and dancing. One story has 4 Nunnehi women visiting a Cherokee village called Notley, drawn in by the music there. They arrived and danced with the young men for hours, but no one ever realized who they really were. They just assumed the visitors were women from a neighboring village. But as the women left the dance, a group of men followed. The women walked down a trail to the Notley River, where they simply disappeared into nothing. That's when the men realized that the women were really Nunnehi. It seems the Nunnehi again mirror their fairy folk counterparts, who are well documented to love music. Some old Celtic tales say that the fairy folk are attracted to music like moths to a flame. For the most part, the Nunnehi were friendly with the Cherokee, especially with people that had become lost. It's said that the Nunnehi would take lost people into their warm underground homes until the person was well rested and ready to return home. If the person chose not to leave at all, they were welcome to stay with the Nunnehi for as long as they wanted. One such story is about a Cherokee man named Yahulah. Yahulah had been separated from a hunting party and become lost. His friends searched and searched for him, but no trace was ever found. They eventually gave up and returned to their village, believing Yahulah was dead. As the story goes, though, Yahulah was with the Nunnehi. They had found Yahulah wandering the forest and brought him home with them. Yahulah stayed with the Nunnehi for a long, long time, until he got to where he was missing his friends and family. One night, Yahulah finally decided to visit his village. He was greeted with great joy and relief, but when the Cherokee offered him a good meal, Yahulah declined. He said he couldn't eat with them because he had eaten Nunnehi food and could no longer eat human food. Yahulah told them he was only there to visit, but would ultimately be returning to the Nunnehi. The Cherokee begged him to stay, but Yahulah refused. He said that he could not choose death with his own people over the immortality with the Nunnehi. Yahulah did return to his new home with the Nunnehi, but it's said he still visited the Cherokee often. Another common point between the Nunnehi and the fairy. Ancient stories warn people never to taste fairy food, no matter how hospitable your rescuers are. You would either be trapped in the fairy realm forever, or you'd be allowed to return home again, but only to wither and die, begging for one more taste of the fairy food. On top of being friendly, the Nunnehi also took on a protective role over the Cherokee, often warning them of upcoming dangers and protecting them in times of need. The most well-known story has the Nunnehi coming to a Cherokee village, telling them to pack up their belongings and to be ready to leave in 7 days' time. The Nunnehi said a great catastrophe was coming, one unlike anything the Cherokee people had ever witnessed before. True to their word, the Nunnehi returned in 7 days and led the Cherokee into the forest, where a large stone rested at the base of a mountain. Much to the surprise of the Cherokee, the stone rolled away on its own, revealing the most beautiful place the Cherokee had ever seen. Many of the families rushed into the opening without looking back, but some remained and chose to confront whatever was coming. Those families that remained were then forced from their homes in the Indian Removal Act of 1838, later to be known as the Trail of Tears. As far as the Cherokee that had followed along with the Nunnehi, legend says that these are the ancestors of the Cherokee people that can still be found in the Appalachian Mountains today. Another similar story tells about how the Nunnehi invited the Cherokee to come live with them in order to avoid war. This story was before the Removal Act and has the Cherokee waiting in one of the Nunnehi houses. The Nunnehi had said that they would return in 7 days' time to carry away the house, along with those inside. The Nunnehi warned them, though, not to shout or make any noises as this was being done. On the 7th day, a sound like thunder approached and the ground began to shake. Despite the Nunnehi's warning, some of the Cherokee in the house got scared and screamed out. The shaking was from the Nunnehi lifting the house, and the screams startled the Nunnehi. Part of the house was dropped, along with some inside it. The Nunnehi steadied themselves and continued on, carrying the rest of the house and the Cherokee people to a place called Lone Peak. The section and people that were dropped became the village of Setsi. In yet another story, another group of Cherokee were said to be taken by the Nunnehi to live beneath the Hiawassee River, in an area where Shooting Creek enters the river. Legend states that when Cherokee fishing nets would snag there, it was their Nunnehi-dwelling kinfolk grabbing the nets in order to not be forgotten by the Cherokee people. It's also said that their voices can be heard on the surface of the water by those traveling in the area. On top of giving the Cherokee people warnings of danger, there are also stories of the Nunnehi taking up arms in protection of the Cherokee. One of the more well-known stories tells of the Nunnehi getting involved in a battle to protect the Cherokee village of Nikwasi. The Cherokee were under attack from an unidentified tribe from the southeast just before daybreak at the Cherokee's most ancient village, Nikwasi. The Cherokee fought back, but were quickly getting overpowered. It was then that a stranger appeared and told the Cherokee chief to retreat, the stranger saying that he would stay and fight off the enemy instead. Believing the stranger to be a warrior or chief from a neighboring village with reinforcements on the way, the chief of Nikwasi did as he was told for the sake of his own people. As the Cherokee pulled back, they saw a mound at Nikwasi open up, and hundreds of Nunnehi warriors emerged and charged the enemy tribe, slaughtering all but a few who had surrendered. The Nunnehi spared those that had surrendered, sending them home with strict instructions to never attack Nikwasi again. Another story relates to the village of Nikwasi during the American Civil War. Nikwasi, then known as Franklin, North Carolina, was in the sights of the approaching Union soldiers to be burned to the ground, as they did with most towns and cities they encountered. Franklin would be an easy target, as all able-bodied men had already been drafted into the war. However, Union scouts quickly returned to their officers, warning them that Franklin was heavily guarded by a massive force, a much larger force than the Union troop had with them. Alarmed by this news, the Union troops changed direction, marching on to Atlanta, Georgia instead. According to the Cherokee, it was the Nunnehi that had appeared to protect Franklin from being demolished. This reminds me of the now famous fairy flag, a chieftain heirloom of the Scottish clan MacLeod. The flag was said to be a gift from the fairy folk to an infant chieftain, and said to have supernatural powers, from luck to increasing the clan's fertility. Above all, though, it was said that flying the fairy flag in battle would allow the clan MacLeod victory in any battle. But be warned, the flag could only be flown 3 times. Then it would either disappear or simply lose all of its power forever. The fairy flag of the MacLeods has been known to be used twice, and is still housed in Dunvegan Castle today. Many Cherokee still in the area today claim to have encounters with the Nunnehi, and many Cherokee that were forced to move to Oklahoma during the Removal Act say one of their greatest regrets was they were forced to leave behind their relatives who had gone to live with the Nunnehi. Whether the Nunnehi are the same race as the Tuatha De Danann or something altogether different remains to be seen. To me, though, the similarities are too close to be ignored. Perhaps it's ancient stories from a time when cultures were closer than we realize. Maybe they are one and the same, different factions protecting different tribes or family clans. Or maybe it's much more simple than that. Maybe we're all the same, protected by the same forces, and we let cultural differences blind us to that, from ancient times all the way to today.